I would have have the pleasure to introduce Jan Rynne, but who is treated under ibrutinib, but unfortunately she is not in a position to come, and she is a chest infection and required to be treated. And but I have the pleasure and the honor to introduce Michael Rynne, her husband, who knows a lot about it, who will comment her slides, and who is, by the way, a very active member of CLL-AN.
Yes, and delighted to be.
And just for the technical people, the timer is a little hard to read. There's a bar in front of it, so if you could fix that for us, that'd be great. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, delighted to be here, to have the opportunity to tell my wife's story. I told her story in Belgrade 2 years ago, and we had great hope that she could travel this weekend, and that I could sit back there with you and just relax, and that I wouldn't have to do it. But Jan is my wife. Some people here might think she's a figment of my imagination, but Dr. Tal Munir treats her in Leeds, so he has met her and knows. So, but Jan's story started in 2011. She was diagnosed with CLL. We had never heard of it. Within weeks we had to gather up information, and really we couldn't get a lot of information in Ireland, and we had to reach out to the CLL community internationally, the CLL Support Association. I was lucky enough to see a video that Brian Kaufman had done when he was seeking treatment, and I think it was in ASH, maybe in 2012. And I realised when I saw him actually going and asking the questions that we were probably going to have to do the same. So we moving on from that, in 2014, we had made a decision. Actually, I suppose the way to describe it is that as we gathered information, we were able to make informed decisions. And what we had seen, we had followed a lot of patients that had started chemotherapy, and we kind of didn't like the effects that it was having on the patients, the results. We could see some patients that did quite well and were going on for many years. We could see other patients that were relapsing fairly quick. With the information that we gained, we realised that the reason this was happening was the prognostic markers, whether Jan had pre-53 or 13q deletion and all this. So we kind of put all that information together, and we kind of decided that we really wanted to try and get on one of the inhibitors. And that led Jan in 2014 to enter a trial in Leeds under Professor Hillman and Tal Munir. And really, ibrutinib, she started ibrutinib in September. Actually, it's interesting. I woke up at 6:30 this morning, and my phone lit up. And when I picked up the phone, it was a Facebook message saying, "You have a memory." And when I looked at it, it was a picture of Jan taking her first ibrutinib that she took in September the 1st, this day, in 2014. So 4-year anniversary. So I couldn't believe that. I didn't think of it all week, and the power of social media and Facebook. So really what happened in the space of weeks of her being on, she went from being very, very sick. Her bone marrow was 95% infiltrated with CLL cells. She was anemic, very difficult even to get her to travel over to Leeds. She was pretty much going to bed every evening at 6 o'clock in the evening. But in the space of a few weeks being on ibrutinib, it was an improving story. Her bloods started improving. I think it's called lymphocytosis, is it, where the WBC rises very, very rapidly. And we weren't concerned because we knew about all these other patients that had the same result, and we knew that it was the cancer leaving the lymph nodes going out into the bloodstream. But as each blood test, the trial started, we had to travel to Leeds weekly, and then it was monthly, then it was 3 monthly, and now it's 6 monthly. And really, her last blood tests, they're perfect. Hemoglobin is perfect, platelets are perfect. There's still a trace level of leukemia cells in our blood. I think it's 0.01, compared to the level that it was at. And really where we are today, actually I should change the slide, sorry. So really, we have kind of two stories. It's the advocacy work that we do. We set up CLL Ireland by connecting with others. My path to diagnosis is on a journey with others, and that is so true. That's actually the picture that came up on my Facebook this morning, which I couldn't believe. And there's September 24. I've already said 96% bone marrow was infiltrated with leukemia cells. Spleen was swollen. I could feel it under her ribs. She was anemic, breathless, fatigue, and then she started the trial drug. That's a picture of us actually, because we'd 4 children under 11 when Jan was diagnosed, and it was a very worrying time for them. And I do remember that every time that we went to Leeds, they were very, very worried, and they were crying when we were going out the door. And then a nurse had said to us, maybe on one of the trips, bring them to Leeds. And we went to Leeds, and that's actually in a park in Leeds. Maybe you probably recognise that park. And since that day, they didn't care about us walking out the door to Leeds. They said, good luck to you, you know. So we had no support from the HSC, which is our health board in Ireland. And the extra burden of cost, worry, time away from family and home, repeated applications for assistance in our own healthcare system. We were very lucky that the hospital in Leeds, even though we're on a clinical trial, it's an NHS-funded trial, and because we're HSC in Ireland and not NHS, we were getting bills from the hospital. The hospital were very good. They had waived 50% of the fees. The whole family's impacted, but there's our 4 kids. They look very happy, you know. So the path to greatness is along with others, and that's really by connecting with all of you guys. And really what we're trying to do here as the CLL Advocates Network is really trying to get you. You've heard that when patients are diagnosed with CLL, there's many different types of CLL, and that the patients that you're actually dealing with, they do need that information, and you have to be advocates for them. And what I would maybe say is in your own organisations is maybe try and have information days for CLL patients, inform them, let them become their own advocates, and let them kind of make, as the treatment paradigm is changing, there are options for patients. We know the difficulties actually getting access, but we heard from the CLL Canada that the efforts that they put in, and they're sharing that information, that we can do it in our own countries. And I suppose where we are now, I should probably explain that Jan has been brilliant, her health has been fairly good. I suppose ibrutinib, I should maybe talk about side effects. You know, there is a side effect profile of the drug, that it wasn't total plain sailing. That you know, when you look up a drug and you see the side effects, she ticked some of the boxes. One of them was she got arthritic pain. One of them in the first week was so bad that she couldn't actually use a knife and fork. That couldn't move her wrists. As time went on, because she was diagnosed at 39, and I suppose it's on camera, but she won't like me talking about this, her periods, but the bleeding issue is that ibrutinib, we learned, affects platelet function. So her periods were heavier, and she became anemic. Even though the cancer was becoming under control, there were still other issues that we probably need to discuss with patients. And I think that they learned a lot maybe from Jan, a young woman, age 39, being diagnosed with CLL. Our journey so far, okay, so talking about the advocacy work, we formed CLL Ireland in 2017. We're a patient-led voluntary group. We're a small group of dedicated individuals who want to improve the lives of those affected by CLL in Ireland. We want to encourage, empower CLL patients, their families and carers, and support the CLL community here in Ireland. And where we're maybe different, we're CLL focused. And when we look at your organisations, and you do fantastic work for all the leukemias and the lymphomas, but we'd love to see a section of your organisation that's CLL focused as well, because it is a complicated disease. And it may be, if you have conferences and it's covering all leukemias and lymphomas, the message maybe will get lost. And maybe have your information days for CLL specific patients to help them on their journey. That's some of our activities, which you're going to see that slide again because I think I have it on the social media. But we print literature on the symptoms. Jan, you can see there, I don't know if any of you are into boxing, Barry McGuigan was a world boxing champion whose father died of a non-Hodgkin's lymphoma in the 1980s, but he helped out with a campaign to make blood cancer visible. And all the different organisations that we've connected with, Cancer Trials Ireland, the Irish Cancer Society have been a fantastic support, and they actually admitted that when we came on the scene that they maybe would have ignored blood cancers and we're maybe covering all the other cancers, and they didn't realise. And what I've learned while I've come to these conferences and I've listened to the doctors and all that, I'll give you a statistic. In Ireland, 10% of cancers are blood cancers. But the research that's going into that 10% of cancers is opening cures for other cancers. Now, that might be an off-the-cuff mark. Maybe the doctors will confirm it or not confirm it. But I have seen it. I remember being at one conference in Cardiff for the CLL Support Association, And I think it was Professor Chris Fagan had stated that when a CLL patient goes into a lab and they give blood, there's live cancer cells that they can work on in the lab, and there's an endless supply of them. And that's where I first actually heard that. He looked around the room and he says, you guys are so important to the research. So keep up the good work. And actually, I should probably explain, actually, Jan, the reason she's sick. We went to Spain in July for a holiday, and it was the first 2-week holiday that we've had. We were able to kind of take 2 days here and 2 days there, but it was the first 2-week holiday we've had in 7 years. And she got a chest infection at the end, and it has just taken a long time to clear. So she was very fatigued and all, but I'm confident that she'll be well when I go back, probably giving out to me that I'm so long here, you know. But fingers crossed. And I suppose, I don't know whether I mentioned, but I do say it to some patients. They say, what difference did ibrutinib make to you or to Jan? And I say, well, in 2012, she was hospitalized 8 times. In 2014 to now, she hasn't been hospitalized once. And that's the difference ibrutinib has made. And I know that the other drugs are showing even more promise. So that's just some of it. Connect with us. So I would advise you to connect with us, because sharing, I have a leaflet that actually at the social media session I'll hand out. And really that's our story. That's why we're here, and thanks very much for listening.